Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel. I am not in our ancestral homeland, Israel, in the Judean hills or Jerusalem. I am in South Florida with Jeffrey Sanow, a retired CIA
operations officer.
I can honestly say you are the highest-ranking CIA official I've ever sat with or interviewed.
That you know of.
And that I know of. So, Jeffrey, you are using your CIA experience, capabilities, security, etc., to be working on something that is of utmost importance for the Jewish community today. Can you share with me what that is?
Sure. Well, in addition to being a retired CIA officer, I'm also a licensed private investigator. So, I grew up in Ohio. I'm not Jewish, I'm Lutheran, and we know what a good anti-Semite Martin Luther was. But we put all that behind us. And where I was raised and the way I was raised was to adhere to the Constitution, which is religious freedom. So you can't tell me how to worship, I can't tell you how to worship. That's bedrock, foundational principles for this country.
Right.
And I spent over 2.5 decades serving that Constitution. So when obviously what happened on October 7th was a tragedy along the lines almost as probably more egregious than 9/11 percentage-wise, but It certainly had the same effect. So anybody that woke up on the 8th of October and was not moved to take some kind of action in support of Israel, in support of our fellow U.S. citizens, regardless of whether they're Jewish or not.
Right, and Jeffrey's referring to now it's 6, I don't know if there were more, there were more U.S. citizens who were kidnapped, taken hostage by Hamas into Gaza. So 6 remain now, some of them were freed.
So they were taken, all the Israeli citizens that were taken, and it's just a tragedy, and anybody can wake up and not see that as a tragedy. Right. I got to kind of question what they got going on upstairs. So I woke up that day, I sent my classified resume to a couple of our mutual acquaintances and said, I'm done being retired, I'm getting back in this fight, because this is ridiculous. So given my experience and capabilities as a operational planner and as a private investigator, I came up with the concept of combining the two. So when I saw what was going on university campuses, well, again, I was aghast. How can we have university students that are walking around saying, gas the Jews, or whatever else stupid things they're saying? How can they say that? That to me is unconscionable. So it's obvious that the Jewish student community and the Jewish communities in general are going to feel threatened, and with good reason. So I worked with a colleague of ours. He basically said to me, you have to find a way to protect the communities. And so I came up with a plan, working with a colleague of mine by the name of Felicia Pecora, retired Tampa Police Department lieutenant, and we put together a plan, a program that we're calling Save Our Students. That's the name of the nonprofit organization that we are sponsoring and putting together. And the idea behind it is, when someone feels threatened, you have a certain level after which they should call 911. If someone's pounding on the door, you call 911. Someone's trying to throw rocks through your windows, you call 911. What do you do if it's just sitting out front? The car's sitting out front of your house and you're uncomfortable, you don't know what they're doing there, or they're following you as you're walking around campus? You can call law enforcement, but they have other more pressing matters. So they're going to be very slow to react because they have other things that are more active. So because I'm a private investigator, I came up with the concept of a quick reaction team. What that is a group of licensed private investigators. Everybody's properly licensed and vetted. Everybody's capable of concealed carry. Again, properly licensed by the state of Florida or Ohio.
Those are the 2 states where you're starting out.
Yes, we're starting out up at Ohio State University, working with the wonderful treasurer Robert Sprague and some of his connections to the university, and then down here at the University of South Florida in Tampa, and then down here in West Palm Beach. Those are the 3 communities where I have connections and some capabilities to make things happen. So quite simply, I sent out an email to the Florida Association of Licensed Investigators and said, I need people that are willing to get out of bed and go knock on a door when I tell you there's a problem. And that's all I told them. And I had a bunch of guys respond. And then I gave them the details where it's, okay, these are going to be mostly Jewish students, mostly Jewish communities, where the individual, for one reason or another, is afraid. It can be, Mrs. Schwartz, who is an elderly lady. Her son works up in New York as a lawyer. Okay, that's fine. But there's no one down here to protect her or care for her.
But that's not just university campuses.
No, it's not just university campuses. We're going to start with the campuses, but we're going to apply it more broadly to the communities.
Got it. Okay.
Because it's the same infrastructure. That's the nice thing about this program, is it's very scalable, so we can grow it very quickly. So anyway, I reached out to the private investigators that responded that said, yeah, I'm interested, and I gave them more details, pointing out the fact that we have a lot of unconscionable anti-Semitic violence going on in campuses and communities. I'm going to put together a quick response team. We're going to plot locations. So I will know where this student lives, I'll know where Mrs. Schwartz lives, if she's signed up for the program. So we get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night, and it's Mrs. Schwartz, or it's the student Jonah, and he calls me and says, look, I'm in the library at the university. There's a bunch of guys walking around with Palestinian flags. They're walking around here, and I feel threatened. He doesn't have to be threatened. He has to feel threatened, okay?
Right.
So I say, okay. And then I hang up, and I call the closest private investigator, who, as I said, we will have fully vetted, and he has less than 30 minutes to get to that student. So again, that's why we have to work with geography and maps. And so we'll get everybody signed up so we know where they are, and I know who the closest one to call is. He rolls out of bed or stops whatever he's doing, puts down his cup of coffee, goes out there, he knocks on the door, or he goes to the library, he goes to the dorm room and says, hi, my name's Bill. Jeff told me to come by and pay a visit. How can I help you? And it could be, the car's parked out front. Well, I've already talked to the driver of that car and they've left. I took their pictures. I took a picture of the license plate, and we'll turn this over to law enforcement. So that way we feed the intelligence branch of law enforcement on individuals that are possibly involved in stalking or other type of activity that, while not illegal, is somewhat predictive, if I can use that term. So they build up their database. We are not replacing law enforcement. If it's a law enforcement worthy, boy, you call 911. Right. But below that level, we want to work with law enforcement. Of course, after I call the PI and tell him to go check on the student or to go check on Mrs. Schwartz, I'm going to call up the Intel Bureau of the local sheriff's office and say, hey, this is Jeff. This is our program. I just sent a guy here. And they're going to go, okay. And that way they know we're going out there. And then afterwards they get the follow-up phone call that says, I'm sending you pictures, license plate descriptions of the individuals involved. They've since moved on, and my investigator has spoken with the occupant of the house so that they are feeling comfortable. The whole idea is to lower the fear factor. The country I grew up in, I think the country you grew up in.
Yeah, I was going to connect to that, yeah.
Nobody should be afraid for any reason, ever. That's just wrong.
Right. It's not that country anymore.
Well, I'm going to do what I can to reclaim it in those
small
100%.
Parts. But so I wanted to go back to that because I was going to say that when I grew up in New York City, 70s, 80s, hardly a synagogue or a school had any serious security. A security guard here and there, right? Nothing serious, nothing more than one person acting as a guard, and no serious threats. Today, there is not a Jewish synagogue in America, I don't think, or a school that does not have a serious security outlook and team. Some more serious in terms of professionals or paid professionals, other more locals. And there are definitely a lot of communities I know of where there are ex-Israeli soldiers now living in those communities, and they've taken upon themselves to help be responsible for organizing and being on top of security and security cameras and the work and who's responsible for what and being prepared. I imagine that people watching this video will be thinking, you want to know something? I want to reach out to Jeff and see if what he and his team are doing can be applied or help me in whether my home, my community, my child in his university. Is that something you're open to people contacting
Absolutely.
you?
Absolutely.
As you branch out?
Absolutely. If you want, I can give you my email address, and you can post that however you post things.
Yeah, so wonderful. So it's going to be right here so that everyone can reach out. And even if you don't have to reach out now, you have the information to be able to reach out when you want to reach out. And again, I want to touch more upon the direction you started to go in. As an American, and a patriotic American, what is going through your head, the fact that this is our new reality, that you are come out of retirement to do this work, which is mostly focused on protecting Jews, but not just, but the fact that this is our reality today. Can you share with us?
I guess I'm mostly mystified in how we can have a media that acts as if it's okay to say, gas the Jews, whatever they're saying that they were reporting on and that they seem to be okay with, when if you were to say, gas the Spics, you'd be kicked off the air. Or gas the blacks, you'd be kicked off the air. And I can say that being married to a black woman. Just so we got the record straight here. You couldn't get away with it.
Yeah, 100%.
And they wouldn't say gas the blacks. They would pick a worse word to use.
Right.
Could you imagine what the reaction of the media would be? They would be, the people saying that would be excoriated and eviscerated and run out of town on a rail. They would just abuse them endlessly. But somehow it's okay to continually broadcast, gas the Jews, support Palestine. And, your talk earlier today about the history is number one, spot on. Number two, that's the biggest problem. We don't have an understanding of history. We have understanding of history, which was 3 minutes ago. That's history. It isn't 1967. It isn't 1948. It isn't 1910. And as a result, we have a not particularly well-educated populace that goes, oh, yeah. And so I'm mystified and confused as to how that can happen and how we can allow it to happen. And that's part of the reason why I just had to come out and find a way to push back. I'm not a teacher, so how can I push back on this? And this is the best way I can think of to reach out to communities and say, this is wrong. How can I be more clear? This is wrong. Not only is it wrong, but I'm here to put my physical being on the line to help you.
Right. To
help you feel comfortable and relaxed in the country that you and I both grew up in.
Right.
Because you wouldn't have been able to get away with this in the 60s and 70s where I grew up in Ohio. You couldn't have gotten away with this, but they're doing it somehow. And I don't see how, and I don't approve of it. And I will continue to work as diligently as possible, to push back on it. And I think one of the lessons I hope that your audience can take away is everybody can find a way to push back.
Very important.
You're not a big guy, but you serve in the military and you're pushing back there. I'm pushing back the way I know how. I have a very good friend of mine who's the head of the training piece that we'll do. This is how she's pushing back. She's going to make sure that we can train the students in what's known as situational awareness so that ideally they can see trouble and stay out of trouble. That's the perfect world. She's also going to work training law enforcement to help law enforcement understand what they're looking at. And I want to use an example on a very astute law enforcement officer in 2004 that saw a lady in the full Muslim wear, Muslim garb, hijab, and she was videotaping the supports for one of the bridges at the Chesapeake Bridge.
Oh.
And this astute law enforcement officer pulled over the vehicle, turns out that the husband, the driver, was wanted on a material witness warrant from Michigan. So he was detained, and they got a warrant to search the house.
This is such an important story.
And when they searched the house, they went down into the basement, and they found a false basement. And hidden in that false basement were 18 boxes of Muslim Brotherhood documents. This led to the Holy Land Foundation prosecutions, the only successful prosecution that we've had in this country for funding of terrorism.
And for those who are not familiar, these Holy Land Foundation documentation, which again, as you just heard from Jeff, is officially in the dockets, the legal dockets of the American legal system, is documentation that outlines the Muslim Brotherhood's plan to destroy America from within, and the various American Muslim organizations that are part of that plan, which includes CARE.
Yes.
If I'm not correct?
Yes.
It is in the documentation that CARE, and this is an organization that still today is allowed into the White House. And they have appointees in the State Department and in the intelligence offices and apparatus here in America, despite that it is in official U.S. legal docket information that it is part of a plan to destroy America from within.
Yes, sir. Let me reiterate, though, it was found as a result of an observant law enforcement officer in the state of Maryland. I want to think he was Park Police. I forget exactly what agency, but it was a Maryland law enforcement officer.
So one final question.
Sure.
Again, and I'm going to touch upon your security your security head for a second and experience in the security apparatus of America. We heard a speaker today who's a state senator in Ohio, right? And she actually is Michigan. She is a state senator in Michigan, actually outside of Dearborn, Michigan. And after her talk, I spoke to her, and she was telling me, like, she sees the videos of the imams 30-minute drive away from her in Dearborn, Michigan, basically calling for killing Jews and destroying America, etc., etc. What are your thoughts about the state of the American security apparatus today, where on that level that's allowed to happen without these imams being arrested and thrown into jail, to the level also of anarchy in the streets, of violence and threats that, from my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe many of the police departments in America have basically been neutered, whether on an educational level or an economic funding level, and not able or not doing what is necessary to give the protection for American citizens today.
Okay, this brings us to a very significant and delicate constitutional question. I'll refer to the burning of the flag. As you can imagine, I don't support that. No friend of mine is ever going to burn the U.S. flag. However, that is a form of public protest which is allowed by our Constitution. I saw the folks up in Dearborn, I think, was it yesterday they were on TV, calling death to America, death to America, death to America. While I clearly don't support that, our Constitution gives them the freedom of speech to say that. Now, that doesn't include violence. I'm not saying that that's okay. And any move to actually implement those threats is not okay. That's a violation of the law, and they should be prosecuted. But their ability and the freedom to say that, the freedom of speech that we have in this country that is part of our Constitution, cuts both ways. And you kind of have to put up with that, because that's part of the Constitution. They have a constitutional right. They don't have to be a U.S. citizen to have those rights. They simply have to be here. They have the right to say that. They have the right to say anything that they want. Now, there is a shade that they can't go beyond. Like, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That is not protected speech. But what I saw on TV, what I saw them saying, well, the demonstrators that I've seen in Orlando that I've dealt with, and they've come after me. CARE has come after me for speaking about Sharia, and they have the right to protest. We have the right to nonviolent protests. Now, sometimes this gets twisted around and muddied and distorted, and some people will say, well, what about the January 6th? And I'm not going to get into that political argument. I will simply say that as much as I dislike what they're saying, they have the constitutional right to say it. They do not have the constitutional right to take any action to implement that, but they do have the constitutional right to say it. Much as I don't like it, as I said, you have a constitutional right in this country to burn the U.S. flag. No friend of mine is going to do that, and no family member of mine is going to do that, but there are people who have been doing that my entire life. You recall the protests of the 1960s and 70s. Burning the U.S. flag was very common. It in fact went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, I believe, and they came back and said it's a form of protest, which is permitted under our Constitution.
I guess you could say my biggest win. I totally hear that, because, and part of my worry about the Western democratic world is that democracies do not have the tools to protect itself from the tsunami that is growing with the impact to destroy it, because democracies don't have those tools. And what worries me is someone who knows the Middle East and is on top of the challenges of Israel trying to be a modern, Western-oriented country in the Middle East, and understanding the Middle Eastern culture, let's put it that way, and with enough proof out there that what starts out as Imam saying, we want to kill Jews and we want to destroy America, leads to a direct link to the growth of violence in the streets that threatens people's lives. And even though right now it's on a low flame, because it does exist on a low flame, it's going to be on a much higher flame. And then the question is, will it be too late?
You know, I don't remember who said it. Maybe it was Benjamin Franklin. One of our founding fathers said something to the effect of, Benjamin Franklin said, we've given you a democracy if you can keep it.
Right.
But somebody else, I might have been Jefferson, said something about the fact that a democracy is only for a moral people. When you lose your moral compass, all the constitutions in the world won't protect you. So are we going to be able to push back on that? I hope so. And I don't speak for a country of 330 million people. I speak for me. And I'm going to do what I can to push back. And more than anything else, I would encourage everybody watching this and everybody hearing this to find a way to push back. Find a way to say, you can go to a mosque if you want. I don't care. That's your right in this country. You can yell death to America if you want. I don't care. That's your right in this country. But there are limits to what you can do with respect to violence. You cannot threaten people. A threat is a legal act, is an illegal act rather. So they cannot do that. It is against the law. And I don't think our law enforcement has been handcuffed or neutered. I think law enforcement in this country continues to do an excellent job in the face of defund the police movements and other things of that nature that were wrong when they started, and anybody with two brain cells to run around and keep each other warm in your head would have seen that that was a bad idea. And though lots of that's being turned around as people realize that you cannot defund the police. Our law enforcement agencies here do an excellent job. Are there bad cops? Of course there are bad cops. There are bad CIA officers. I mean, I could list the ones off to you that work for the Russians. Yes, look up Alder Games. Anyway, and let's see, wasn't there a guy that worked for the Israelis, I think? Oh, yes, there was. He had one of yours. So anyway, the point is, the large majority of our law enforcement do a fantastic job. And they're not handcuffed. They simply are abiding by the law, and that they cannot violate people's constitutional rights. And that gets to be a very messy area if they start to do that. Like I said, you can burn the U.S. flag. You can yell death to America. You can't threaten me. Come up, get in my face and threaten me. That's against the law, and you'll be prosecuted. So freedom comes at a price. And just as we have people who are willing and anxious to say death to America, we also have people that, like the Congresswoman from Michigan, that will say, no, this is wrong. You can't do this. You're violating other people's rights. You, as a Jew, has every right to live as peaceful in this country as I do. And part of what I'm doing now is I'm working to make that possible in the only ways I know how, working with some great people, working with the great state of Ohio and some of the folks up there, the folks down here, to put in place a way that will lower the temperature, lower the fear factor, because nobody should live in fear in this country. My children won't live in fear. I won't live in fear. My wife won't live in fear. My ex-wife won't live in fear. I wouldn't tolerate that. So I just think everybody needs to take a step back, take a breath, and say, wait a minute. This is wrong. How can I push back? You can contact your local synagogue. You can contact your local Jewish center. You don't have to be Jewish to do that. Simply reach out to them. Find ways to make sure they understand they're part of the community. If you know of a protest that's going on, do a counter-protest. That's what this country's all about. You get people on one side of the road waving an Israeli flag. You get the other side of the road waving a, what's that place called? Oh yeah, Palestinian. Waving a Palestinian flag. So that's what it's all about. You get them waving the donkey on the one side, waving the elephant on the other side, go Trump, go Biden. That's what this country is founded on, that freedom to do that without feeling threatened. And we need to bring civil discourse back. I'm very blessed with some friends that you probably know of who are very, very active Democrats who recognize that I'm not an active Democrat and still treat me with love and respect and friendship, as I treat them. So we have to get back to that. It's okay if you're a Democrat. I don't know. You vote the way you want. This country has privacy of vote. I don't know how you voted. Don't tell me. I don't want to know.
Right.
We need to respect that. We need to get back to respecting one another. And we need to make sure that the people who are not respecting this country understand that that is not acceptable. And when you have Ivy League university presidents going, anti-Semitism, gee, I don't.
Depends upon the context.
What is anti-Semitism? What nonsense that was, and I'm so glad that lady is in that position, although I believe she's still at the university. We can't allow that to stand. We have to call them out on it. We have to support politicians that are going to call them out on it. Democrat or Republican, I don't care. They have to say, no, this is not acceptable, and go from there.
Jeff, thank you so much. And again, everyone, what's your email so people can contact you if they want to?
It's Sanow, so JSANOW at pinnacleglobalsecurity.com.
All right, you're gonna have the link right below for his email address, so you don't have to memorize that one. But Jeff, thank you so much for everything you're doing. And again, coming out of retirement, it's definitely something you didn't have to do, but you're doing because you believe it's important as not just as a human, not just as an American, but also as a Jew. Thank you very, very much.
And thank you for the service that you're doing in support of Israel. And please let me know what else I can do.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Everyone, signing off for another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in South Florida. Looking forward to returning to our ancestral homelands. If you are not yet a subscriber, go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe. And if you enjoy the content and the messages we put out there and you want to support our work to ensure more people see the videos, just click on the donate button every once in a while on pulseofisrael.com. Shalom, everyone. Thanks for watching. If you are not yet a subscriber to our daily, belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect, truthful videos about Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom-loving world, what are you waiting for? Go to pulsevisual.com and click to subscribe today. And yes, we are a donor-based operation. We need your donations for support in order to make these videos and get our videos seen and do all the work we do. So every once in a while, whether a large donation or a small donation, just go to pulsevisual.com and click on the donate button. Shalom, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.